Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Up here on Rattlesnake, all this area in here, down this shoreline here, back in this little cove down there, you've got a nice structure that's back in this area here. You've got the shell reef that's on this outside. Our water levels are back up to somewhat normal levels. It's been nice to have this extra water back in here in the system. One thing that you need to be aware of this coming week is that we've got a nasty front that's pushing in toward the end of the week, and we need to make sure that you're paying attention to that. If you're going to be out on the water, make sure you look those weather reports and make sure you don't get caught out in these things when that big old front comes blowing through here, because it will not be a fun situation for you. But all that being said, that's going to help our situation. You have prefrontal bite that's going to be kicking in, so those fish will be looking to eat. So find your area that's got some bait working it. This particular area here up here on Rattlesnake has had some nice bait that's been working on the shoreline. The darker down south, the devils have been working well. Again, that's been a go-to for the last few weeks is the Corky devils. Corky, the fat boys and the floaters have both been real good in this area as well. So just take your time. There's some nice trout that are working all up and down the shoreline here, and just take your time and work them real methodical, and you'll find a good box of fish. Over here in Carlos, in this outside shoreline right here, all up and down this thing here with the extra water that we've had come back. Again, the water levels are back up to somewhat normal height. So now you can get this here and work right off that shoreline. Water's been pretty clear some days, other days it's not so much. Those days that it's not so much clear, you got a nice little off color green color that's in here that you can't see, but maybe 6 or 8 inches down into the water. That's about perfect setup for you. Again, I'll tell you one thing that's been working really well in here has been a topwater bait. A topwater bite has been pretty good. The water temps have gotten up into the 60s. That topwater bait has kind of turned on somewhat here, so be patient with that. Chunk it and chunk it and chunk it, and you'll get a reward for it, because there's been some good action with redfish and trout that are hitting that thing up in here. Again, the darker down south has worked well up on this shoreline. The fat boys have been pretty good as well. All this area here, continue to look for your grass, look for your drop edges, and just hang loose there, and just look for that for the protected water area when that big front that comes blowing in this weekend. Just make sure you're protected from it. Keep working this shoreline and you'll find some good fish. Right along here, all up here on Jaybird Point and back down towards Spalding, all this area here, this back lake that's right back in this area here. Some people call it Sherman's, but this little spot right in this area here, again with the water levels being back up, it's brought this back into play. The water levels have been too low to really get back in that back lake here lately, but now that the water levels back up, we can bring that back. There's been some scattered redfish that are back in that back lake there. The outside edge on the bay side, there's been some good trout that are working up and down that shoreline there. The darker down south has been the most productive in this particular area, working the drain mouths on both ends of that back lake. You go on down toward Jaybird, and there's a couple of more drains that are down there. Work those drains as well. Again, the darker down south have been the ticket out front on the bay side. Get in the drains, and that's where your corkies will come to life in there, or the devil, either one. The floaters, all your suspended baits have come into play in those deeper drains inside the drain mouths. There have been some nice trout and some pretty good redfish that are scattered in there as well. All back here in the Dunham Flat area on this back shoreline, you can wade it. It is soft in some areas, so be careful if you're going to jump out of the boat and get on this back shoreline here. There's been some nice redfish that have been scattered up and down this shoreline here. The topwater bite again in this area here has been pretty good. The darker down south, working out in just about 2 to 3 foot of water, has been really good in here. Again, the Corky fat boys and devils have worked really good in this area as well for some good scattered box trout. There's been a bunch of those areas in here that's got a bunch of the smaller trout in this area. You may have to go through maybe 10 or 15 of them before you find a good keeper one, but they are there. But as you get further back in this area here, make sure you jump back in the boat, because it gets super soft back there in the very back of that. So you want to get on your trolling motor and just kind of work down it, work the edges, work out a little bit deeper, look for some bait that's working in these back mouth drains that go into the lakes and stuff, and then you'll find some nice trout and redfish that are hanging in those drains as well. Down here on Swan Lake, all the guts that go back into Swan Lake, all these areas here with the outgoing tide have been good out deeper with your darker down south. There's been some nice box trout hanging on that grass line that's out there, a little bit deeper water. And as you continue to work this area here, get back in the backside here into Swan Lake. It's nice and mushy back in there. You can wade the shorelines back there. There's been some nice redfish scattered throughout the whole thing. There's some on the back shoreline. There's some out in the middle. One thing that's been really good for me is to throw a top water bait in here as a searcher bait, and you'll get some nice blow-ups. They may not necessarily commit to it, and once you start getting those blow-ups, either switch back over to your plastic or go to a double D. That has been the ticket right there, is that particular combination. It's been real good. As you continue to work this back shoreline all the way down, look for the bait working back here, look for it out a little bit deeper, continue to throw your top water, work the double D, you'll find some nice redfish and scattered trout.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.